Hi, so let's talk about a topic which is very famous nowadays, and this topic name is versus uh, microservices. Code and yeah, monolith versus microservices. So let's talk about them in detail. So you get understanding of what is monolith, what is microservices, and what's their difference, and what's their use case, and which one should you use to build your next application. Let's start. So monolithic application is built as a single unit. Okay, it's something which is said about monolithic application. For this line, you can imagine if you are writing an HTML page and there is styling tags within HTML, you are doing styling in that page only. Okay, so it's just a single document. It's a single notepad. You written the whole code to make it a good website, right? Let's say it is having HTML, it is having the styling, it is having script, JavaScript, and within the script tag. So that's your monolithic, where the whole code base, you have done CSS, JavaScript, HTML in the same thing, same document, right? Which is possible, and that makes the code uh, very big sometimes, and that's like single unit of code for complete website. So that's a exact monolith in front of you. While microservice architecture is a collection of smaller, independent, deployable services. Now, if you remove the word deployable, you can see that as a React app that you have JavaScript in a separate folders. There is a module for each component. There is a separate styling, yeah, like folder for styling for um, separate style sheet. You can say at least that is there, and yeah, HTML is very less in terms of like components are there. So yeah, that is very modular architecture. So it's a collection of smaller independent unit. Each component you can say is kind of, you can design them independently, and every you can say that is sure that every developer can work on a single component. So that's how you achieved the modularity. But deployable is something which you cannot just say that okay, I'll deploy this component and this component, the whole application gets deployed. But in microservices architecture, when you create that kind of an application and you have that on cloud, you can deploy one of the service and as an independent unit. Yeah. Okay, so which one is right for you first of all? uh, Look, this is very initial stage to just straight away the answer. Okay, so to like which one is right, that depends on number of factors. But before that, let's study what it is so that you can judge your thing that based on the factors which you are having, like what you should go for. So the story began with Netflix in 2009, when it became the first organization to, not first organization but a first big scale organization to successfully shift it, okay, its architecture, its infrastructure from a monolithic to a microservices. Okay, so let's read it. Its infrastructure cannot keep up with the rapidly growing video streaming services demand. Okay, of customers. So they had a private data centers to the public cloud. They decided to migrate its private data centers to the public cloud, replace monolithic with a microservices. Only problem was microservices did not exist as a structure, uh, as it was not well known, so it became the first high profile organization to successfully migrate this. So that's why it won some of the competition, and that basically started this DevOps world into new infrastructure. Okay, today it has thousands of microservices that manage and support separate parts of the platform. Now, Netflix is an earlier pioneer, and in something like deploying this microservice architecture, which is very common nowadays. That's what they're trying to mention. So first mention what is monolith. Monolith is again, as I mentioned, like I need to make it more emphasize that it's a traditional way or traditional model of software program, right? Which is built with a unified unit. It's a self-contained, independent from other applications, and monolith is often termed abbreviated as something which is very large and glacial. Well, it's not far from the actual reality. but it's not the complete truth as well. Your monolith can be a really small application if your organization is small, if your data is small, if your user base is small. So that depends on the use base, okay, use case which you are in. So truth from monolithic architecture, monolith requires a singular large communicating network. So one thing is sure that your code base would be a singular and only one code base that couples all the business concerns together, okay. It does not decouple anything, it couples all the business concerns together. So if everything this is still less in terms of code, and that, okay, so that like, yeah, the less is different for everyone. So that is also one thing. To make change of this sort of application, it requires updating the entire stack by accessing the code base and building and deploying the updated version of scalable of service side infrastructure that makes it restrictive and time consuming. So that is monolith. That is like single code base. That is like a singular unit, large computing network, and yeah, like everything coupled together. Every business concern is coupled together. So sort of an application requires updating a stack by accessing the code base. You have to access the actual original code base, which is the only one to do actual updates. That's a kind of a risky thing, but yeah, that is because the code is actually very less, and this makes the update restrictive and time consuming. So monoliths can be convenient early on the project, ease of code management, convenient overhead deployment is very easy, and this allows everything monolith to be released at once. So this is browser, payment, shopping cart, inventory, and as a single instance. Okay, a single server is handling your shopping cart as well, payment as well, inventory as well. Okay, so this is the monolith. So this is like how you designed your back end of the system that okay, it is handling everything. And what is advantages? You can benefit from either a monolith depending on the number of factors when deploying developing a monolith architecture. The primary advantage is the fast development. Like you just said, developers can just go and then develop application directly, and yeah, due to simplicity it has advantages: easy deployment, one executable file, only one executable file which is need to be executed, right? And it makes the deployment easier. Development is only single code base, so you don't have to go for like 10 different locations, you just need to go with only one place. And a centralized code base repository, one API can perform same function that number of APIs perform in a microservices. There we need one number of API for, let's say, bigger task, which is like, have 10 subtasks, so 10 APIs is there, but there you can do with one API only. Single monolith application is single centralized unit, okay, it's a single centralized unit. So simplify testing, okay, so it simplifies testing. Its deployment is very easier, so that is again I'm repeating it so many times. Development is very easier and faster, I would say. Easier is not a right word, because if you get error in the complete code base, then you have to see in the complete code base, right? So but the development is faster. You do a change, and same time you can do like within the 5 seconds you can make like complete application very yeah, you can change it up to a large extent. There's APIs, right? Performance. So one thing is that often perform like you need less APIs. Easy debugging, obviously, as I said, one place. Now disadvantage, like most of the advantages will become the disadvantage. That okay, debugging, but small code, right? Only in case of small code. As case of Netflix, is quite effective until they grew too large to become scaling becomes a challenge. Making some small change in a single function requires compiling testing entire platform, which goes against the agile approach. So the disadvantage is very limitless. That scalability is one of the first thing. Slow development speed is the second thing. That only like that service should be there to for that service to work. A large monolith application makes development more complex and slower, because you need first thing, then second thing, then so there is kind of an ordering in your code, and obviously there is only one code file. So as soon as yeah, you don't do the first part, you cannot work on the second part, kind of a thing. Okay, and so it's very difficult to like manage. You cannot scale individual components. Reliability is an issue. Error in a one module, like yeah, single point failure. Obviously, any error in a module it could affect the compare application. Barrier to technology, lack of flexibility is constrained by technology already used in monolith. Deployment, okay, I said that this is an advantage, but a small change to monolith requires a deployment of the entire monolith. You can deploy it very faster, but for even a small change you have to deploy it again. So there it becomes the, every advantage will become disadvantage. Development is an advantage, it is because you can do it the same thing, but then complex, slow development speed, so that's why development is also a disadvantage. Performance, you're getting APIs, but then there is a reliability. Okay, if you trigger something wrong, if single point failure affects the complete application. And I think simplified testing is something like, which again is not, yeah, debugging is, again debugging is same thing, is that it will become disadvantage when you have to debug the complete application to find a single smaller issue, right? And but it's easier because you can see so many things at the same time. But yeah, so it is easier for the smaller application when you can debug a lot of things in one go. But yeah, for bigger application, the debugging becomes more complex. So what are microservices now? Let's talk about. So it is not something like monolith. First of all, it is not something like single unit of code. It is not something like a single yeah, unit and something. What I said, it's a single unit, one large piece of code, and yeah, you need to. So this is like distributed in nature, thoda sa. So it's like independent deployable services are there. First thing, simply known as it relies on independently deployable services. That's it. These services have their own business logic. Yeah, their every business logic is coupled very tightly. Every business logic is decoupled. Each service has their own business logic and database for specific goal. Updating, testing, deployment, scaling within each service. You have to do updating, testing, deployment, and scaling each service separately. Okay, scaling each service and deploying each service is a something like you need to look out for. That is not generally available in applications, but yeah, these are the microservices. Decouple major business domain. So these are the 3 points, like single unit of code, coupling of all services, and like these features, updating, testing, deployment, and uh, are yeah, like not specific with the service. They are like done as the same on monolith, but they can be done separately in microservices, independently deployable service. So micro do not reduce the time of complexity, but they make a complexity visible. First of all, that okay, this is the complexity of an application. There are 10 modules, there are 10 JavaScript files, there are two styling files, and so on. So you can see actually everything and into smaller process. And individual JavaScript file is a very small thing, right? To manage and to work on, contribute. So first thing they do is that they don't reduce, they make it visible. So managing becomes like a lot more easier. Goes often hand in hand with DevOps since they're continuous delivery practices. So there it is, payment, shopping, inventory. They're talking with each other. They are microservices in itself. Okay, and action journey to Microsoft. How Atlassian moved in 2018. They had a single tenant monolithic architecture. What I mean by single tenant is that yeah, at one place the complete code base and every service is running there, and then only premise on premise there are large supercomputers or something like servers they are having, but it's a single thing, and they are running a same code. Okay, and what they decided to re-architect Jira and Confluence to move them to stateful single from a stateful tenant to stateless. You are trying to move to stateless cloud-based application. Okay, where the application state does not matter, so that you can handle each service. Advantages of mono microservices, but they solve no means a silver bullet, but they solve many problems. And you can develop, deploy, update each thing separately, perform more frequently, and EDC readability, uptime, performance. The benefits include again increased deployment. These all plus generally microservice make it easier to team to update the code and accelerate the cycles. So these are the advantages. Sorry, agility. They provide you agility. Flexible scaling is something which microservices are designed for. Multi-team and stateless customers spread across multiple instances. So continuous deployment you can do easily. Highly maintainable, easily deployable, independently deployable. Not easily, independently you can deploy each service. So that saves up deployment. Yeah, and flexibility and high reliability. Okay, like obviously, not a single point failure is there. You can deploy changes and specific without threat of being into the entire application. Happier teams. Yeah. Disadvantages are increased complexity. First of all, that leads to the development sprawl or rapid and managed growth, challenging to determine how companies related to each other, components are related to each other. And so, first is development sprawl, more complexity. So, since the microservice, the overall development process is not that straightforward. Okay, that's why you have so many developers that are working at the same time. Now this is the advantage that it allows that, but the disadvantage is that you need 10 developers now. Before that only one developer was doing it. And a bit more complexity, but you visible complexity as they say. Okay, created multiple teams and not properly managed, it can slow the development speed. And exponential infrastructure cost. Okay, infrastructure cost is really there. Like cost is there, but the services they provide is like, yeah, scalability they provide is worth. And added organization overhead. Okay, team needs to add other level of communication, so you need to communicate well. Debugging challenges, obviously, that between different teams you have to do debugging. And lack of standardization. There's no standardization without a platform. uh yeah, everyone is working on a different thing. Different service require different things. There's no standardization. Clear ownership. Okay, lack of clear ownership, so the number of services that you can display. Now this is the monolith and microservice. You can see everything is there, right? The code base, the everything. And there are each services has their own database and has own server and so on. May not be for everyone, but monolith may perfectly well for simple. But organization grow, the demands grow, and then they can go for that. So this was all about monolith microservices. There are 3 points that you have to remember about definition in monolith. They are single code base. Okay, they are tightly coupled, every business concern. And the third thing is that development, maintenance, and this happens at the same, like for same thing. For even if you have to update a single point of thing, so let's keep it that way. Like how they put as microservice services, updating, testing, deployment, and scaling occurs for the whole code base, occurs within each service. Okay, this is the third point. I think coupling and decoupling is clear. Architecture is like they're a single code base, and this is independent deployable services. That is clear, and this is the main part. And then after that, you can just talk about their advantages, disadvantages, and what they actually are. That okay, what they bring to the table is that how they decouples thing makes it easier, but how it makes it bit complex, but it shows the complexity. Whereas if you grow, scaling is very issue in the monolith, that you cannot scale. Because there was a thing which they have not mentioned, I would like to add that RAM and the memory scaling has a limit to it. So that's why we go for cloud. That's why we build a multiple servers, so that each one can have a specific amount of RAM and database and storage space which you can use. So that was about microservices monolith. Thank you guys.